GamingBolt presents 14 worst Xbox exclusives Microsoft wants you to forget. Alright, we already know all of the jokes you're going to make. Oh, Xbox has 14 exclusives, or they're all bad. But just stop. Let's just stop right now. Over the years, from 2001 to now, Xbox consoles have had a number of excellent exclusive titles. And to celebrate all of those wonderful exclusives in this feature, we're going to take a look at all of the worst ones. Let's jump right in. Fusion Frenzy 2, Xbox 360. Fusion Frenzy 2 is a game that keeps on surprising, a game that keeps on upping the ante of just plain and simple suckiness. For some reason, Microsoft thought it would be a good idea to make a sequel to what was at best a mediocre game. And for some reason, they also thought it'd be a good idea to make the sequel even worse. Just when you think you've played the most boring, aggressively annoying minigame ever, the game goes, think again, buddy, and slaps you with an even worse minigame right in your face. Inside Pitch 2003, Xbox. To be fair, Inside Pitch 2003 was a game that could occasionally be pretty enjoyable. Certainly it's better than most of the games that are listed in this feature, because as far as online play was concerned, which wasn't all that common for a console game back in the day, it was actually not that bad. But the general lack of polish, the terrible AI while playing single player, and the lack of some pretty significant modes made Inside Pitch 2003 an overall disappointment. AZURIK Rise of PERATHIA, Xbox. AZURIK Rise of PERATHIA is the poster boy for all video games that are not broken but torturously bad in almost every way possible. Terrible visuals, check. A frustrating camera, check. An uninspired, boring story, check. Gameplay mechanics that are borrowed from all over the place but never implemented well enough for that lack of originality to not be an issue. Yeah, check. Kakuto Chojin Back Alley Brutal, Xbox. Kakuto Chojin is the kind of game that you could look at from a distance and genuinely be impressed by. That's because it had, for its time, truly impressive visuals. Incidentally, this was about the only thing worthy of praise in the entire game. The single most important thing in any fighting game is its mechanics, and for a game that was trying to go up against the heavyweights like Tekken, Kakuto Chojin's mechanics were simply unacceptable. They weren't broken, but they were pretty much the next worst thing. ROBOCRAFT Infinity, Xbox 360. ROBOCRAFT Infinity is the perfect example of a game that just doesn't know what its biggest strengths are. Creating your own robots was definitely the best aspect of the entire experience, but for some reason, the game saw fit to restrict most of its options in that area behind overbearing loot boxes and microtransactions. What was left was simply not good enough. The shooting mechanics were dull, the multiplayer was boring. All said and done, once you've built some cool-looking robots, you should be able to do something with them, right? Well, according to ROBOCRAFT Infinity, apparently not. BLOODFORGE, Xbox 360. It's hard for a game to truly be offensively bad. So bad that it just makes you angry while you're playing it, makes you feel like it's completely wasting your time, and is totally aware of that fact. BLOODFORGE is that sort of game. A fleeting look at it in motion can give you the impression that it's a stylish, cool-looking action game, but if you play it for even a bit and you realize that it's an uninspired, boring, horribly written, mind-numbing experience that lacks all of the polish of the games it tries to imitate. Motion Sports, Xbox 360. The Kinect never really took off, and if you ever wondered why, it was because it was flooded with mindless shovelware titles like Motion Sports. The least you could expect from a game centered on full-body motion controls is that it reads your motions accurately, a core fundamental that this game somehow manages to get horribly wrong. I'm not a huge fan of Kinect Sports, but this game made me ache for Kinect Sports. SCREWJUMPER, Xbox 360. SCREWJUMPER, with an exclamation point at the end, is worse even than its name might suggest. It's not even a game, it's essentially a few seconds of gameplay mindlessly repeated over and over again. Which would be somewhat acceptable, I guess, if those few seconds weren't just so sluggishly executed. We just cannot conceivably recommend this game to anyone for any reason at all, unless of course you're a masochist who wants to feel their brain dying one cell at a time. In that case, it's going to be right up your alley. The Warriors Street Brawl, Xbox 360. The Warriors Street Brawl was made by huge video game fans who were miffed by the fact that the films industry keeps taking our properties and turning them into horrible movies. They said, "Oh yeah? Well, we're gonna show you what it feels like." Then they made this game with boring, repetitive missions, combat that felt unresponsive due to sluggish movement, and the most dreary and bland visuals you will ever see in a game. As the negative reviews poured in, they triumphantly looked at their creation, gleefully rubbing their hands together. "How do you like that?" they said through gritted teeth. "That'll show them." Well, mission accomplished, I guess. Crimson Dragon, Xbox One. This was a launch title for the Xbox One, and we're quite sure Microsoft regrets that now. Crimson Dragon isn't offensively bad, but perhaps that is the nicest thing that can be said about it. It feels like a terribly rushed title, with mission structure that feels monotonous, and it gets boring very quickly, and the controls just don't respond the way controls should respond in any decent, self-respecting game. The fact that the game imposed oppressive monetization mechanics did it no favors either. Fighter Within, Xbox One. Another launch title for the Xbox One, and I'm sure Microsoft regrets this much, much more. This was back in the day when Microsoft still considered Kinect a viable option for playing video games. And if ever there was a game that could show them just how wrong they were, it is this one. Like most motion control focused games that suck, the motion controls in Fighter Within were broken. Translation: Fighter Within was frickin' broken. NIGHTCASTER, Xbox. NIGHTCASTER is the very definition of mediocrity, the prime example of a game with good ideas and poor execution. Or well, some good ideas. Its combat was fast-moving and could be fun occasionally, but it lacked the mechanical depth to sustain that fun for too long. For its time, it looked good enough. Its limited range of things to do and a decidedly lack of variety made for what was, in the end, a largely forgettable game. NIGHTCASTER 2 Equinox, Xbox 360. Most reasonable people would have expected NIGHTCASTER to take the flawed yet somewhat promising aspects of the first game and try to improve upon them. In all of its wisdom, it instead decided to suck more. NIGHTCASTER 2 is an incoherent mess, plagued with glaring issues in level design, combat, music, visuals, and just about every other area possible, making you wonder how it even managed to get greenlit for release in the first place. It's like banging a bunch of steel utensils together for 3.5 minutes and then releasing that on iTunes as your first hit single on your debut music album. Sneakers, Xbox. And here it is, the worst of the worst, the bottom of the barrel. This is not a ranked or numbered list, but we thought it would be a good idea to place this at the very top, or bottom in this case. Considering how many horrible games we've spoken about in this feature, calling Sneakers the worst of the worst might seem like hyperbole. But it really isn't. If you've played it, then first of all, we're really sorry. Second of all, why did you play it? We're just curious. Doesn't seem like a healthy decision, and we're not healthy either. But third of all, you know what we mean when we call this probably the worst Xbox exclusive of all time. In my view, it is the spiritual successor to the E.T. video game. You know the one that almost killed the entire video game industry? Yeah, that one. And that about does it for this video. If you enjoyed what you watched and want to see more from GamingBolt, you can always hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell icon next to it. That way you will never miss any of our videos.